an action or rule, law, policy is morally right if it produces the greatest amount of happiness for all people affected. So the method for determining whether an action or rule, law, policy, etc. is morally right is this. When you have a decision to make, you need to think about what all of your options are and then do a cost-benefit analysis on each of these options, and that will enable you to determine which produces the greatest amount of happiness for all people affected. That's it, right? So if you have, a question like, should we allow people to own guns in the United States? That's an ethical question. Well, broadly speaking, there's at least 3 different answers to that question, 3 different options that we might take in regards to that question. We could outlaw guns, so nobody has guns. We could give everybody a gun. That is a logical option. Or we could allow just some people to have guns, right? And those are pretty much, logically speaking, those are the only 3 options. Everybody has a gun, nobody has a gun, or some people have a gun. Then what you do is with each of those options, you do a kind of cost-benefit analysis. You try to figure out who would suffer from, let's say, nobody having a gun, and who would benefit from everybody having a gun, right? And how much would they suffer? How much would they benefit? How much pain is being caused by this option? If we actualize this option, how much pain would be caused in society, and how much happiness would be caused in society, right? That's pretty much what it is. Levels of pain and pleasure, levels of happiness, right? And so we go through the different choices, and we would say, well, we almost try to come up with a number, right? That's the idea, is you want to try to come up with a number that you can assign to each of these options. So I always like to talk in terms of happiness units. I just made up that thing. And as everybody knows, 1 happiness unit is equivalent to 1 Wawa hoagie, right? So that's how that's how the units of measurement work with happiness units. Is 1 happiness unit is the amount of happiness. 1 happiness unit is the amount of happiness that you derive from a Wawa hoagie. So the idea is you have these 3 different options. Everybody has a gun, nobody has a gun, some people have a gun, and you will want to assign values to this. You want to figure out who would suffer, who would be made happy by each of these alternatives so you can come up with a number. Okay, so who's affected? How much would they suffer? How much would they experience happiness as a result of each of these options? So let's say that giving everybody a gun is provides 100 happiness units. Like, it makes some people unhappy because there's a lot more gun violence, but it makes gun owners, gun nuts, very, very happy. And maybe some people are able to protect their property or something, so it makes them happy. And so it's like a little bit of a benefit, but a modest one. Let's say that the outlawing guns provides some happiness, a little bit more than everybody having a gun. It maybe provides, 1,000 units of happiness, something like that, over the society. And again, I'm just obviously BSing a little bit with these numbers. But, obviously some people are going to be made unhappy by outlawing guns. People who want to hunt, they're going to be made unhappy. People who want to shoot for sport or something like that. Like at a range, not like hunt people for sport. They're going to be made unhappy. Other people are going to be made happy because, gun violence may go down, this kind of thing. All right. And then let's say maybe having some people have guns is the optimal thing. It provides 5,000 units of happiness. All right. So some people, again, are made happy. Some people are made unhappy. But that's the idea, is you go through your different options. Anytime you have a choice to make, anytime you have a law you're thinking about passing, you think about who is affected, what are our options, who is affected by each of these potential options that we have, and you choose the one that maximizes the happiness for society as a whole. That's the whole idea, right? So in a sense, theoretically, it's very, very clean, right? Practically, it's extremely difficult because it's a really difficult question to figure out, how would it affect society if we outlawed guns versus giving everybody a gun? That's really difficult to figure out. So in order to have utilitarianism work well, you need really good social sciences. It's an empirical question of how happy it would make people or how unhappy it would make people if we outlawed guns. So you'd have to actually go out and study this, right? So you'd have to do surveys, you'd have to do happiness studies. I don't know. You'd have to figure this kind of thing out. And that's extraordinarily difficult to do. And so utilitarians are always in a position where the theory is very, very easy. You just do the thing that would produce the greatest amount of happiness for all people affected. No choice, no option is going to make everybody happy, so somebody is almost invariably going to be made unhappy. But the idea is you try to maximize the amount of happiness that you can cause while minimizing the cost, the unhappiness that is caused, right? So you minimize the unhappiness, you maximize the happiness. That's the idea, okay? So that is essentially utilitarianism in a nutshell. It's really, really clean, as I said, in theory, but it's very, very difficult to figure out in practice. Okay, so let's go back and just briefly apply what I just said about utilitarianism to the ticking time bomb scenario. So if you have a ticking time bomb scenario like the one I described, and there's a nuclear device about to go off in 12 hours in Philadelphia, it seems like you at least have two options. You can round up everybody in our class and torture us, or you can round us all up and just do intense interrogation. It's not as if the option is either to torture or just for the cops to like sit around and eat donuts or something like that. Like that's not the two options. The two options, and there could be, there's obviously more than just two, but let's just keep it simple. Let's just say the options are at least to torture us or to do intense interrogation. All right. And so what you would do in that scenario is you would figure out, who is affected by each of these options. So who's going to be affected by torturing us? Obviously, we're going to be most primarily affected. Our families may be secondarily, but each of us as individuals most primarily, and we're going to suffer extremely, right? So yeah, I mean, if they really wanted to do this and they were trying to torture somebody, they could make you hurt. I think that students are sometimes really a little bit too glib, a little bit too easy about this. They're like, oh yeah, whatever, they could torture me. You should actually sit down and think about what that would actually be like. I've obviously never been tortured, but I have experienced something as torture adjacent. Public school. I don't know why I said that. That's true. But no, I experienced something torture adjacent. I was once, if you're squeamish, I don't know, cover your ears for like 30 seconds. I was sanding wooden stairs at a house that I used to live in. And I was like doing it by hand because I didn't have a power sander. So I was like by hand, like sanding as hard as I could on this, but wooden stairs. And unbeknownst to me, there was a little splinter sticking up as you can probably see where this is going. So yeah, right under the fingernail and my pinky finger, it was like all the way up to like the knuckle. It was really long. It hurt like hell. Like it is unbelievable to me that something so small, and I was not like in mortal danger in any way, shape, or form, that something so small could cause so much pain. I was like, F it, like come on. Yeah, I was censoring myself. That's right. Luckily I was able to pull it out with tweezers and it didn't break. Like I don't even want to imagine what that would have happened. Then go to I don't know what they would have had to do in order to get it out. And it hurt a lot. So luckily it pulled out, and oh my gosh. That hurts like a lot. And the idea of somebody me just saying it hurts a lot is not conveying it, obviously. It is extraordinarily painful. And the idea of somebody doing that to me voluntarily and intentionally in order to inflict pain upon me is like, I hope that I would pass out. I probably would pass out. Thing is, nowadays they have drugs that can wake you back up. I think that students are way too easy about this. Just like, oh, whatever, it's a little torture. It's like, no, like that would be like catastrophically by a wide margin, the worst thing that you've ever experienced in your life. Yeah. Like by a wide margin. The amount of pain that you can inflict upon a person is extreme. So in any case, obviously we would suffer a whole lot. But it's like there's only, 20, 25 of us, and then 6 million people. You might say, if you're thinking about this in the balance, it's like a lot of unhappiness here. But if it works, then like you're saving 6 million people, like, come on, you might say, I would be screaming and crying and trying to like do anything to escape that. But as from an outsider's perspective, maybe that's the right thing to do if you're saving 6 million people. So on the other hand, you might say that maybe the enhanced, just like intense interrogation, would be, because it's not just like, please tell us where it is. Like they're going to put pressure on you. I'm just stopping short of torture. Maybe that would be sufficient. There's also, so you could think about that. That would be less cost, but maybe the likelihood that success is slightly lower. I'm not exactly sure, but it gets into really interesting questions again that are kind of like empirical questions about, in this case, does torture work? Obviously, this is not something that we can study, but America has done we have tortured people. This is not just like an urban legend or something. President Obama owned up to this and said that we had done this. I think he said we tortured some folks. It's like, it's an odd way of putting that, but yeah, it's a very folksy way of putting that. But yeah, we did torture some people. So we'd like black sites and stuff like that after 9/11. So we were torturing people. So we know a little bit about it, but there's debates about whether or not it's effective. I know if somebody was torturing me, I would just say anything in order to get them to stop. So if they're like, where's the bomb? Even if I have no idea where the bomb is, I'm going to start naming places if it'll get them to stop. So there's some debates about whether it's effective at all. And so you might say, if torture is actually ineffective, then the payoff isn't there at all. The payoff is zero. And what is the cost? Torturing, 19 innocent people and one guilty person. And so in that case, the net benefit is actually negative, not positive, if it doesn't work, right? So in cases like that, in fact, too, you might think about this in terms of like, global politics. When we tortured people, that made a lot of people angry. So it's not just the local context. Like, if you're torturing terrorists, you might actually be making more terrorists because people don't like it when you torture people, right? So these situations are very, very complicated, right? It's really hard to tell, what the knock-on effects are going to be of torturing somebody. It's really hard to tell what the knock-on effects are of having, for example, capital punishment versus not having capital punishment. Does capital punishment, is that a bigger deterrence than just life in prison? Some people say yes, some people say no. It's difficult. I'm not, not a relativist about this. I'm not saying, there's no right answer to it. I think there probably is a right answer to it, but it's just really hard to know epistemologically what is the case. So in any case, this is how you figure things out. You try to plot out what your different options are, and you do a kind of cost-benefit analysis. Who is going to suffer as a result of this potential action? Who is going to benefit as a result of this potential action? Sometimes those things overlap, right? It gets really, really complicated. But the idea is you want to try to maximize the happiness of society as a whole. So when you're thinking in terms of utilitarianism, you are thinking about the consequences. You're not thinking about the morality of the action per se. You're thinking about the consequences of the actions. And you're not just thinking about yourself, right? You are included in what's called the utilitarian calculus when they're doing this kind of cost-benefit analysis. But the idea is if you're thinking about a moral question, you're not just thinking about your own happiness. You have to think about the happiness of society. So really what Mill is saying is he is saying, let's take something this is how we make decisions all the time. Like you go home and you're trying to think about what you want to have for lunch. You try to maximize your own happiness. This is what you do. You look in the refrigerator and you're like, well, there's salad, there's steak, there's chicken or whatever. That's quite a spread you got there in your refrigerator. I want to hang out with you. I've got like mustard and some salt or something. I think that's about it. I wonder what I'm having for lunch. Mustard, salt. Anyway, so you have the options in front of you and you try to figure out what would make you happiest, right? And that's how human beings try to make decisions all the time. And so Mill is just saying the difference with ethics is that you don't just think about yourself, but you think about everybody who's going to be affected by the decision. That's pretty much what ethics is. You try to maximize the happiness, not just of yourself, but of everybody who's affected. And that's what ethics is all about. All right. So now we're going to talk about objections to utilitarianism. Here's where the rubber really hits the road.